Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I read a really interesting series of posts and article about what some people are doing in regards to innovation for Ukraine. And I thought I'd check in with Joel Semeniuk, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for Communitech. Communitech is Canada's leading innovation hub in Kitchener. I've had the pleasure of touring it a couple of times and have been really impressed with it. In addition to leading strategy for Communitech, Joel oversees programs that help connect startups to Canadian markets, and we might touch on that. But really what I want to talk about tonight is something called CUSIC, the Canadian Ukraine Security Innovation Challenge. And it's really interesting. It's Communitech really going out to try to find innovative solutions to some of the security problems in this war in Ukraine. Joel, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about what CUSIC is and what you're doing.
Yeah, you know what? CUSIC is this evolution of something that we started last year that really started to surface these problems with national security in some of the other things that we've been doing as an organization. So we've been doing a lot of work in healthcare and municipal innovation. And over again, topics around national security came up. One thing led to another, and we've had many conversations. We met up with an organization that we've partnered with in the past, the Ontario Centre of Innovation, as well as an organization in Kyiv called the Ukraine Startup Fund. And we said, hey, why don't we actually do the same thing that we've been doing with municipalities and healthcare and trying to surface some of these common challenges that might exist around national security and see if some of our Canadian and Ukrainian startups can actually have solutions to these startups problems. And if they do, let's make sure that we're connecting them with the people who need them.
So you're doing what, venture capital or just connections or just networking or what?
Really, our goal is to connect people with problems to solve. So this would be national security, people with national security interests, with people who have solutions. And the goal is to actually incentivize adoption. So there's no prize at the end of this. There's no venture capital. The prize is really engagement and being able to start using some of the solutions that we've identified to help solve some of these critical problems. So really what we start off with is this whole process of identifying some of these common challenges that some of our security, national security partners like the Royal Canadian Air Force, Royal Canadian Navy, and so forth have expressed. And our partners in Ukraine did the same thing. And lo and behold, we started to see some patterns of some of these common challenges. So we launched a call for solutions. Yeah.
Can you give me some examples?
Well, national security is a really broad topic. And the first thing that people start thinking about is warfare. This has nothing really to do with warfare. National security has everything to do with economic security or energy security or supply chain security, and of course, data and cybersecurity. And that's where we started to see the majority of our problems to sit around. So I'll give an example. How might we protect ourselves against some of this malicious code that's being generated by AI, like platforms like OpenAI? They're really good at writing code, especially code that exploits systems. So how might we monitor and protect ourselves against that? Other ones might be, how might we communicate across NATO and our allies to share threat and vulnerability information very, very quickly? Another challenge might be, how might we securely, undetectably, and quickly communicate between trusted partners? So as you can see, a lot of these are real kind of in our wheel well when it comes to technology. And we're looking for startups or larger organizations that have solutions to this so we can connect them up to the people who need them.
And have you found lots of companies in Canada that have such solutions?
Turns out there's a lot. Canada is, as you probably already know, we are a leader in things like AI and quantum and security. And it turns out that there is a tremendous amount of intellectual capital here. What's really interesting, though, about a lot of these organizations is they're not doing a lot of business in Canada. They're doing a lot of business abroad. So, part of our secondary mandate is to make sure that some of these very successful, very innovative companies really are able to have opportunities at home, as well as with our partners such as USF in Ukraine.
How did this whole initiative get started?
It really started, as I mentioned, with some of the programs that we were running before. One of our other programs was called the Future of Cities, and we engaged 44 cities across Canada to take a look at some of their common challenges. And over again, protecting critical and digital infrastructure came up as being, hey, this is something we should pay attention to. There's a lot of cyber activity going on right now. You've probably seen in the news, even sick kids at the beginning of the year, there was a ransomware attack. And from what we understand, about $530 million is the cost of some of these ransomware attacks in Canada a year. But anyway, one thing led to another, and we started to say, hey, how about we create a future of national security and bring together a lot of people who might want to have a voice in that? And so that's what we did. We brought together, we had a session in last December where we brought together, I think, like 30 or so different experts from that community to identify some of the areas that we can focus on. And just with that one event, that one ability to come together, one thing led to another, which said, hey, why don't we actually work internationally through our partners, OCI and USF, to look much more broadly to see how we can expand this to not just be Canadian, but in fact help our Ukrainian friends as well.
I interviewed one military security expert who said that Canada has got this idealistic attitude. We just don't think national security is an issue. Do you agree?
I think there's a lot of people who do think it's an issue, but I think the commoners, people who are not necessarily involved in that, they're not thinking that we are under a threat. But I think over the past year, we're starting to realize that not only are we starting to see more and more attacks in the news around a lot of Canadian organizations, but I don't know about you, but I get like 15 to 20 texts a week with random stuff about my bank account being accessed and so forth. I think that the wave of personal attacks are starting to make everyone aware of how active this is actually. The realities of this in the Canadian ecosystem. So I think people are really paying attention now. And I think, of course, the war is really creating an exclamation point on this. Obviously, there's much more going on than just active warfare inside of Ukraine. There's a tremendous amount of cyber warfare that's going on across the world today.
Where's it all coming from?
Well, it's funny. I was actually just watching the news today, and they were talking about, a lot of it is in fact coming from Russia. Obviously looking at opportunities to infiltrate and take control of critical infrastructure, all around the world. This might not be done by the Russian government, but is definitely, encouraged, if you will, to a lot of the cyber threats are really coming from that region. We also see some threats coming from China and North Korea, but mostly right now, a lot of it's coming from Russia.
Really unbelievable. We're chatting tonight about the Canadian-Ukrainian Security Innovation Center, something Communitech out of Kitchener-Waterloo has launched. We're talking to the Chief Strategy Officer there. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes. So we're going to try to delve into some of the actual programs and what they're accomplishing and how it might be impacting on this war and on Canada's national security. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Our topic tonight is innovation, innovation from a national security standpoint, really, and in regards to specifically helping Ukraine in this war that they're in regards to the invasion of Ukraine from Russia. Our guest is Joel Semeniuk.
Close enough.
Close enough. I apologize. Who is the Chief Strategy Officer for Communitech, Canada's leading innovation hub in Kitchener. In addition to leading the strategy for Communitech, Joel oversees programs that help connect startups to Canadian markets. Joel, we've talked a little bit about CUSIC, which is the Canadian-Ukraine Security Innovation Challenge. That is something that Communitech has launched. And I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people are kind of intrigued by the resourcefulness of Ukrainians, it would appear, in this war. and drones that seem to be commercial, publicly available drones that somehow they've gotten to do some fantastic things. Autonomous motorboats that would appear that are attacking ships on the Black Sea. But I'm also at the same time a little bit disappointed that they seem kind of rudimentary, and that we should be able to do far better. And yes, we're now thinking about tanks and jets and other stuff, but there's got to be lots of other things that we could do to assist them, not just telling them how to create Molotov cocktails. So what is it? What are some of the things that we could do from Canada in businesses to assist Ukrainians?
Well, it's a really good question, and I'm certainly not a warfare expert whatsoever. I am an innovation expert, and one of the things that I do know is that innovation is the enabler, is the multiplier. Your ability to deploy new ways of thinking, but also new tools that help exploit that new way of thinking. And so, when you think about all the things that are going on, you obviously have a warfare component, and our challenge does not intersect that domain whatsoever. But we also have things like, how might we secure supply chain? How might we, secure communications between, different NATO allies and perhaps even troops on the ground? These are really important things that we can, solve today. And by the way, there's tons of solutions that are out there. They just haven't been deployed yet. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do is trying to make sure that we're aware of all the problems that intersect and connect with that challenge, but also make sure that we can learn from them as well. That's the one thing that I do want to stress, is that these challenges were sourced not just from the Ukrainian perspective, but also from the Canadian perspective as well. And we've identified shared challenges that obviously are relevant to the war in Ukraine, but are also relevant to securing our own infrastructure here in Canada. So what we were looking very broadly, I mean, you probably remember over COVID that we had some serious supply chain issues with things like rapid tests and masks. This is a national security issue when we don't have access to those required materials when we need them. And really, a lot of this can be solved with some really good innovation, but more importantly, the adoption of that innovation where it needs to be hit the most. So what we actually see right now is just the ability for us to identify some of the challenges that are shared across countries, and just making sure that we're able to surface the solutions, but more importantly, validate that they in fact work, test them, and making sure that they get deployed when they need it. So it's really the activation that we're trying to create. And our call to action right now is for any of the innovators that are out there in Canada with these amazing solutions, please come to our website, submit some of your solutions so we can start evaluating you and bring you into this process.
What is the website?
The website is CUSIC, CUSIC.ca.
And when did this program start?
We actually started the program silently, early in the year. After lots and lots of coordination and lots of collaboration with other partners. So, for example, Rogers Secure Catalyst, Cyber Secure Catalyst is involved in this program as well as with a number of other partners. We slowly started to gathering some of these challenges. As you can imagine, that just takes time. So it took us a number of months to bring together the challenges and the web assets that we have. And by the way, we're all doing this almost on the side of our desk. So this is not a funded program. This is something that we're all volunteering to do because we all believe it's the right thing to do. So we officially launched our challenge, our set of challenge statements on August 21st. And that is the official call to action, the official call for innovation, if you will, for innovators to submit their solutions to some of these challenges.
And do you have a connection, a partnership with an organization in Ukraine?
Yeah, and that's the Ukraine Startup Fund. So they're located in Kyiv, and they're just an amazing organization that it blows my mind talking with them every single week. We talk about the logistics of the program, and all I can think about is that they are living in a completely different world than you and I are living in every day. And these people are amazingly committed to this process and amazing to work with. And I'm just blown away every single time that we talk with them.
I presume the goal sounds like it's both to have an impact on Ukraine, but also something that could be useful in Canada as well.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we're also trying to do is shine a spotlight on the way that Canada procures its own stuff. Now, that's a very common theme that we've been looking at for the last number of years. Why is it so difficult for Canadian innovation to be adopted in Canada? And at Communitech, we have over 1,000 startups, and so many of them have the same story that they had to go away to be successful, and then once they're successful, we can then procure them from within Canada. Is there a way that we can short circuit that? Is there a way that we can shine a spotlight at procurement reform at a municipal level, at a federal level, at a provincial level, to ensure that we're looking first in our backyard for solutions, not just because they're Canadian, but because they're really good solutions and we can still save money by adopting them locally. Plus, it's adding to our economy at the same time. So we can do a way better job at doing that. And sometimes focusing on the most important problems really does shine a really big spotlight on that problem.
Why is that Canadian companies can't develop sort of into commercial stage in Canada too often? I used to be in the pharmaceutical and biotech business, and the line there or the belief there was that you could get launched in Canada, but to really get to commercial stage, you had to go to the United States to get funding, probably get the executives, to probably get the sponsorship to get to launch stage.
Yeah, this has been studied quite a bit, and there's a number of factors. Some of them is just risk aversion. As Canadians, we're like, well, let's just wait until someone else does it before we adopt it. That being said, we are an amazing source of innovation. We can start companies here and invent, all this amazing tech. But from a commercialization perspective, we're likely going to go to where our biggest consumer base is going to be. For a lot of organizations, it's going to be to the U.S. I mean, just to give you an example, 2/3 of California's healthcare spend is all of Canada's. So if you have a healthcare solution, you're going to go towards a denser market versus the way that you would sell in Canada might be, every single province, different institutions. It's just a tremendous amount of effort to get to that same level of density, but it's going to be different for different segments as well. And honestly, our procurement rules don't really emphasize the fact that we should be looking and buying from Canada first. Right? I think, we've seen Buy America for the last 40 years. That does make an impact, making sure that we are looking locally first before we're sourcing those solutions from elsewhere.
Why don't we have Buy Canadian?
That's a good question. One of my old mentors used to tell me, there's two ways of looking things. There's conditions and decisions. We're not dealing with the speed of light here. These are things that can be changed, and there's a tremendous amount of case studies from around the world of how other countries, from the United States to the UK to other countries, have changed the procurement to reflect making sure that they're consuming locally at the same time. Now, I'm not saying that changing procurement rules is easy, but it's definitely something we should be looking at nationally, and it is definitely something that can be done. Again, it's a decision, not a condition that we have to work with. So I'm really looking forward to sparking some additional conversations around this real need.
But isn't it something that we really have to have a good discussion of during COVID? And you mentioned supply chains. I think we found that a lot of PPE that was coming from China was cut off, and then Trump cut off PPE from Minnesota and stuff that was supposed to come across the border from our biggest trading partner and our closest friend, supposedly. We had mRNA technology that was developed in Canada but not exploited in Canada, had to go to the United States to get exploited, and that ended up creating the vaccines that a lot of us ended up taking. And we had I interviewed a bunch of different people that are working on vaccines. We had a couple of people in Canada working on vaccines. None of them really got approved and commercialized, and we ended up using vaccines from the United States. After SARS in when was it, 2003, there was a judicial commission in Canada, in Ontario, take a look at a bunch of the problems, and one of the problems they identified was local manufacturing, local inventory, local scientific development, et cetera, because they said there could be problems in the future with accessing some of that equipment, some of that knowledge. If we think that we're going to have problems with Russia or China or North Korea in the future, don't we have to have more nationally produced products, more nationally
Absolutely.
oriented science and technology?
Absolutely. And it's not just because it's made in Canada. It's not just because it's locally available in Canada. It's because it's better technology that we can likely buy for cheaper. And that's the thing too. We're not giving away, the fact that we're going to be paying more money for made at home technology. It's better technology made at home. And there's a trust component as well. So I completely agree. We need to keep on having this conversation, and more importantly, we need bold leaders to say, no, we actually need to run, be a participant in programs such as CUSIC or, some of our other programs to continually push that narrative of looking locally to solve some of the problems. And what's really also interesting as well is that sometimes the solutions are completely novel to some of the organizations that we work with. Back in the day when I did a lot of consulting work, 20 plus years ago, we used to live and die by this request for proposal, these RFPs, right? Where we would submit our solution or our approach to a particular problem, but it was always kind of written with a solution in mind. It was always kind of solutioned it before they actually really dove into the problem. And what we're actually seeing now is like we have this problem, and what we can do with some of these intermediary programs, such as what we provide at Communitech, is to open up a really broad swath of potential solutions to that problem that no one had ever thought of before. And that's what we hear time and time again. It's like, we'd have never thought of approaching this problem in this way. And that's really where the innovation comes from. And this is something that we're really good at as a country. We've always been good at innovation. We've just never been good at buying our own innovation, right?
You raise a really interesting topic, and I'm not sure if we can get into this in detail, but procurement is, I think, part of what you're talking about. And I heard a big criticism of the way that we do procurement in Ontario with Infrastructure Ontario and Metrolinx and people like that, in that what we do is we do a lot of the design ahead of time, and then we go out for a bid. And because of political pressure, we always want the lowest bid. And so therefore, it is, and the way it was described to me is that we have a bunch of civil servants that are doing a lot of the innovation, and they're asking the people that actually travel around the world looking for, really innovative new ideas to not think about that, just to bid lowest price. And the example that was given was, if you really wanted to look for innovation, you would say, how am I going to get a whole bunch of people from the suburbs to downtown Toronto in a cost-effective, reasonably efficient and quick manner, rather than saying, if I have a GO train that goes down this specific track on this specific route, how much would it cost to bid it? And the people might come up with different solutions, and the solutions might be far more innovative. It might be a hyperloop, it might be a fast train, it might be a autonomous vehicle, it might be a whole bunch of other things. Do we have the right procurement process to get the most innovation?
We don't today, but it's changing. We got a little tugboat that's making micro changes along the way. And it's funny that you brought up Metrolinx. One of the programs that we ran was called Future Cities. We've now rebranded that to Fast Track Cities. But that involved a lot of municipalities across Ontario and actually across Canada. And in fact, one of the startups that was in our program just signed a deal with Metrolinx to run a program. Their organization is called Scooty Mobility. So they actually have scooters, and they've just signed a deal with Metrolinx Metrolinx to essentially extend the user experience from the GO train to be able to go directly onto a scooter and get to that last mile of commute, if you will. So slowly but surely, they are in fact starting to look at and evaluate some of these solutions. And I think the more that we can do that, the more that we're going to be challenging kind of traditional approaches to some of these procurement problems. There is a movement that I've been seeing lots of. It's called value-based procurement, which is really starting to take hold. That it was really looking at the holistic value of the procurement process versus just lowest bid. Now, that being said, there's no reason why we can't produce technology at the lowest cost as well, but also with some amazing innovation tied into that at the same time.
So you launched this CUSIC program, and you're out looking for innovative solutions to some of the challenges that you've identified for national security, both in Canada and in the Ukraine. You're going to get a bunch of, hopefully, hundreds and hundreds of submissions in this regard. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to choose the winners, or are there going to be winners? And what are you going to actually do? Have a big convention, unveil it all, or what?
A little bit of all of that. One of the great things about being Communitech is we have a superpower. Our superpower is connecting, convening, and catalyzing. But we're not experts in national security. We're not experts in healthcare or municipalities. But we know who is, right? So we're able to bring them together to really perform a task. So throughout all of our other challenges, we were able to solicit really amazing, talented doctors and experts in their field to go through an adjudication process. And then what they would do is come up with something called what we call a rubric, a decision framework of how they would go and score and rank the solutions that have been submitted against the challenges that were provided to us. And then they would all participate in this adjudication process independently, so that we're getting a data-driven approach to making the selection. And that will narrow things down into either a top 10 of solutions for all the different problems, or in fact, just choosing the best solution. And in fact, there has been times where we haven't found a good solution to some of the challenges, in which case we won't engage further. So we have this ability to be a bit of a gravity well to bring these organizations and people and experts together to run through this. And then what we do is we narrow down the playing field, we make the selection, and then this is where we kick in. We actually, we surround these startups with coaches and those who would be able to help prepare them engage with some of the organizations that we deal with. And then we get to the point of doing a big event. We like doing events at Communitech. We call them our solutions showcase. But more importantly, it's our job just to make everyone aware of these amazing tech companies, so that maybe there's some additional opportunities that are lurking out across Canada for them to also engage on. But more importantly, we want these initiatives to lead to some form of engagement. Those can be a pre-production pilot project or an evaluation, or something that leads to some form of commercialization or engagement between that startup and the enterprise that we're serving.
Do you think it'll work? Will you have some impact?
Yeah, you know what? We've been doing these types of programs for, very actively and very much, I won't call them nationally, but we've been doing national calls for innovation for 3.5 years. And, the example that I gave you with Scooty and Metrolinx is just one of the examples. We do make impact. We wouldn't keep on doing that if we didn't see these results. And what's really interesting is we make impact in a few different ways. Of course, our goal is commercialization and engagement, but the secondary goal is learning. So I'll give you two perspectives of that. When we were running our Future of Cities, there were some cities that weren't ready to procure and engage, but they really wanted to be a part of the problem discovery process and the network that we were able to build and support mechanisms that were around that. The process of going through problem discovery and collaboration around that was tremendously valuable to some of these municipalities, and that changed their thinking in terms of how they can think about innovation in the future. Second to that, even the startups that did not get selected for downstream. I'll give you an example. Scooty actually wasn't one of the ones that actually were selected by our adjudication team, but because they were part of the program, they were part of the network that we built out, and were able to see or capitalize on the opportunity that Metrolinx brought to them. And those who didn't get selected get amazing amount of customer feedback in a very, very short amount of time, something that's really hard for a lot of startups to do, especially in a less dense ecosystem.
We're chatting tonight with Joel Semeniuk, the Chief Strategy Officer for Communitech, Canada's leading innovation hub in Kitchener, about CUSIC, the Canadian Ukraine Security Innovation Challenge that they just launched recently, and that they're out trying to look for security solutions, national security solutions for Canada and for Ukraine. And they've got a whole process of information of what the challenges are, getting people to submit, and then adjudication. Sounds fascinating. That I think is going to have a positive impact both in Canada and hopefully in Ukraine. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes with Joel. And I'm going to ask him a little bit about Communitech and why this process of networking and interacting actually works. Stay with us, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Joel Semeniuk, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for Communitech. And I read recently a couple of posts and an article about a program that Joel Semeniuk at Communitech and Communitech has launched called CUSIC, which is the Canadian-Ukraine Security Innovation Challenge, which is a way of trying to get innovative people across Canada, innovative companies and others that have come up with some national security solutions to some of the challenges that they've identified to put them forward. Joel, I wonder if we could take a step back, though, and tell people, if you could, what the heck is Communitech? And you know, I've heard that it's an accelerator or an innovation center or a cluster or an incubator. What is it? And why is this kind of bringing together people in a common spot like Communitech or the Waterloo Accelerator or something like that, or you know, the big medical one that's here in Toronto? Why is that helpful?
Yeah. Communitech was formed in 1997 by founders, for founders, realizing that, you know, one of the best ways that we can help each other is to literally help each other. You know, so how might we do that? How might we get together often to talk about some of our shared problems and share of our experiences? One thing led to another, and we became a community of tech, of an organization who is helping facilitate these conversations. I mentioned before that one of our primary superpowers is connecting, convening, and catalyzing, and that's really what community is all about. You know, we create the room where people come in and congregate. We facilitate the conversations around meaningful topics, whether or not it is specifically for the founders or some other problems like in healthcare or in procurement or national security in Ukraine. And then what our goal is to try to catalyze the activity that comes out of that and help facilitate and guide that. You know, our only hope is to serve the founders in our ecosystem to help them start and grow their businesses. The amount of technology and intellectual property that's coming out of the Waterloo region, or the region of Waterloo, I should say, is second to none in Canada. It's amazing. In fact, from a tech worker perspective, our region has the highest number of tech workers outside of Silicon Valley, just to kind of give you an indication of how vibrant our ecosystem is. So really, we're there to help unlock that growth potential by creating a community where these founders get together and learn from one another, but also learn from the other aspects of the community. We bring in growth coaches and people who have been there, done that, to help our founders get what they need. You know, and I've been a part of community all my career. I used to do a lot of work with Microsoft in the early days. We're talking 1994, 95. I'm aging myself a little bit by creating communities around technologies. And I've always seen the unpredictable yet profound outcomes that come out of these types of initiatives. And it's very much a non-zero sum perspective. You know, we're all in this, and everybody who participates, you know, in this community gets value from that participation. And, before I started working with Communitech, I used to do work all around the world. And I remember I was on a flight. And for some reason, I was thinking about the impact of open innovation or community-led type of initiatives such as this on change, on making change. And I started to remember this old story I used to read to my kids. It's an old folk story called Stone Soup. And it really was this ancient tale of a community coming together and individuals contributing what they could in the benefit of the entire community. And it really is, in my opinion, the most effective way to bring about change, especially at a time of uncertainty. I mean, everything is changing in the world. We have wars, we have technological change, like, large language models and open AI. Like, everything is changing really quickly. Literally, our north is on fire. How do we adapt to change? Well, it's together. That is the way that we adapt to change. And so what we're trying to do is bring together so that we can create that environment where we can live, learn, and adapt with one another. And that's really the core of what Communitech does.
Okay, so it's a nice idealistic point of view that we can all get together and make stone soup, and thank you for that. But why is it that these agglomerations in Kitchener-Waterloo and Silicon Valley are so much more innovative and have such a higher number of tech workers than everywhere else? Like, what is it? Is it a university? Is it an accelerator? Is it BlackBerry? What is it?
Yes. All of those things need to be come together to create these ecosystems. In Silicon Valley, you have Stanford, for example, as being a really big aspect of why they became that. But without industry also being there, kind of tapping into that talent coming out of those educational institutions, we would have never had that center of mass move from the East Coast, the Boston, New York side of things to Silicon Valley. And it's the same with the Kitchener-Waterloo environment. At the heart of this, we've got phenomenal world-class educational institutions. I mean, this is why literally Google sits inside of the KW region, because there's such a stream of talent. And of course, BlackBerry was a massive component to the growth of that ecosystem. So you need to have a play of all of these things. But more importantly, how do we actually get this technology out, right? How do we get it out and commercialize and realize that we can build an engine around that? And there's really that mindset that exists there. Now, literally, I've been in innovation centers all around the world. And when I first came to Communitech, I'm like, they get it. It's the greater than the sum of the parts mindset. It's the let's build a barn together mindset. It's the way that people think is really, really amplified and embraced, in that region. And it's amplified with what we're able to produce, through all this great tech that's coming out of it.
I used to get invited to events that you had, I think probably before COVID, not sure if you still have them, called Funders and Founders events, where people would come in and they would get a label as to whether they were a user of money, a founder, or a source of money, a funder. And people went on speed dating, sort of from a business standpoint, for the evening. And someone described it that you could come wearing whatever, and you could have whatever the background you wanted, and you could be successful in that kind of an environment. And in Toronto, you had to get invited to the York Club, and you had to have a really fancy suit, and you had to spend a huge amount of money on initiation. And that it's a very different way of interacting with the people that have got money, the banks in Toronto, than it is the funders in Waterloo. And they sent me actually an article that compared funding in Silicon Valley versus Boston, and it was very similar. That in Boston there were classes and different niches, that different groups that you had to break barriers down to get in. And in Silicon Valley, everyone was there, and something like over 57% of all startups were started by at least one founder that was in the United States on an exchange visitor visa or a student visa. Is there something different in Waterloo that makes it easier for people to interact and get funded?
It's a really interesting question, and I completely agree with you. I've worked a lot in New York and Boston, and thankfully I have retired. I don't even know if I fit into those old suits anymore, but if you're not showing up with the right suit and the right matching belt and shoes that are also polished, you're probably not going to get that next meeting. There's something about a meritocracy that seems to be prevalent in both of those areas. People get super excited about the potential of an idea, the potential of technology. And they're looking at that versus what you're wearing, or where you come from, or anything like that. There is a different mindset. And I think that's just been cultivated over decades of the community giving back. So in the early days, in the early 1990s, we had some early successes, and those people stayed there, right? Those BlackBerry people stayed in the region, and they kept on fueling that mindset back into the ecosystem, which is phenomenal. And we see the same types of those systems, in Silicon Valley. So, I remember my first time in the Valley, I came all, with a shirt and tie and a collar and all that kind of stuff. And I was ostracized. I'm like, no, put on your hoodie. People will take you more seriously with the hoodie than they will with your dress pants. So I also applaud that, the growth on merit versus the growth on looks.
Have you seen Oppenheimer, this new movie?
I have seen Oppenheimer. Yeah, it's terrifying.
It is terrifying in some ways, but it's also, I think, a lesson about taking a whole bunch of very smart people and putting them together in one location and asking them to work on something. And isn't that what you're doing with your program right now?
It's exactly what we're doing. Absolutely. We are bringing the minds together. We're putting a problem in front of them, and we are doing what we do best and just making sure that we're facilitating. We're not going to be in their way. We want to create a mechanism that they can create something greater than the sum of their parts as a result of that. And the same is true with so many other initiatives. With the Enigma project, for example, in the UK, same thing, brought a whole bunch of minds together, and now we have computers, as a result of that.
If there's people listening tonight that have some brilliant idea and want to submit it, and or people that just want to follow on your progress or maybe assist or fund or something like that, where do they go? What do they do?
Best place to go is CUSIC, CUSIC.ca. All of the program description is there. I just want to also emphasize that we are in partnership with the Ontario Centre of Innovation, just a wonderful partner that we created this initiative with, and we could not have done without. They'll be able to see all of our challenges there and submit from there as well. Also welcome anybody to just reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if you want to chat about it or have some ideas. Welcome to have more discussions for sure.
Joel, I really thank you for the work that you and the organization are doing, because I think that innovation is going to end up being critically important in this war in Ukraine, and I hope that you play an important role and help accelerate the end of this process. Thanks so much.
No, thank you, Brian, for letting us amplify this really important program.
We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody.